"I release you," said Mr. Fenton Gryce, loudly enough for the second violin to hear it, "and I trust you will take it in a Christian spirit." He dropped the woman's hand in the middle of the Ingram ballroom, turned on his heel, and walked 20 paces to where an heiress in primrose satin waited with her mother. And the whole assembly of 300 people watched him do it and made not one sound. From the top of the ballroom steps, Ambrose Roll, 5th Duke of Ingram, set down his glass. He had not intended to come down at all. It was his own house and his own ball, arranged by his aunt and paid for by his rents, and he had spent the first 90 minutes of it in the library with a map of a drainage scheme, because Ingram at 39 had discovered that a man may host 300 people and still be left alone if his reputation is unpleasant enough. But he had come down, and so he saw it. The woman in the middle of the floor was in white muslin plain, well-mended, 3 seasons old, and beautifully worn. Her gloves were darned at the left thumb. She did not move for a full 3 seconds, and Ambrose understood that she was not frozen with shock. She was calculating, coldly and quickly, how to cross 40 feet of parquet without giving anyone the satisfaction of a scene. Around her, the fans came up. The whispering started like rain on a roof. "Miss Marbury," said someone quite audibly. Well, one did wonder how long he would carry it on. "Debts of 11,000, I heard. The father shot pheasants and everything else." She had the bands cried once, and now this. Ambrose watched her lift her chin. He watched her turn, not toward the door, which was the near escape, but toward the top of the room, where his Aunt Lady Cordwell sat under the largest chandelier. And he watched her walk the whole length of that floor through the whispering, unhurried, to thank her hostess for a delightful evening. He had commanded men. He had seen courage in the ordinary places where it lives. He had rarely seen anything to match it. His aunt, to her credit, took both the girl's hands. But the room had scented blood by then, and as Miss Marbury turned from the dais someone's cousin put out a foot, half in play, and she caught it, and stumbled, and there was a sound of laughter, bright, delighted, mean. Ambrose came down the steps. The laughter stopped as though a door had shut on it. It always did. He had spent 15 years discovering that a man with a hard face and a great deal of land need never raise his voice, and had grown to detest the discovery, and had used it anyway. He crossed to her. She had recovered her balance and was straightening her skirt with 2 fingers, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were dry and furious, and very slightly afraid. "Your Grace." "Miss Marbury," he bowed, fully, as he would have bowed to a princess of the blood at a depth the room had never once seen him use. "The next is a waltz. I am told I dance it badly. Will you correct me?" The silence went absolutely flat. "Sir," she said low, "you need not. I am perfectly able to walk out of a room." "I have just watched you walk the length of one," said Ambrose. "It was the finest thing I have seen in this house in 5 years. I am not offering you rescue, Miss Marbury. I am asking for a dance, and I have not asked anyone for a dance since my mother made me, and I should be obliged if you would not make me ask twice in front of my own musicians." Something moved at the corner of her mouth. It was not quite a smile. It was better. She put her darned glove into his hand. He danced badly. He had told the truth about that. But he danced the whole of it, at the head of the room, under the chandelier, with his hand at the waist of a girl in 3-season muslin, whose engagement had been broken 40 feet away 11 minutes earlier. And by the time the music stopped, there was not a woman in that ballroom who did not understand precisely what had happened, and not a man who dared say so. Mr. Fenton Gryce was still there, by the card-room door, with the heiress on his arm and a great deal of color in his face. Ambrose returned Miss Marbury to his aunt, thanked her, and then walked over to Gryce, unhurried, and stopped in front of him. "Your Grace, I am glad to find you have not left," Ambrose said pleasantly. "It saves a letter. You hold a lease of the Pyacombe Farms from my estate, 640 acres, on my sufferance, at a rent that has embarrassed my steward for 9 years. Do you know why you hold it?" Gryce's mouth opened. "Because your late father asked me at his last to be easy with you, and I gave my word, and I have kept it." Ambrose looked at him for a moment. "You have just, in my house, in front of 300 people, informed a gentlewoman that you release her, and instructed her to receive it in a Christian spirit. I find my sufferance is at an end. You may write to my steward on Monday for the terms of an ordinary lease at an ordinary rent, and I would recommend that you write early, since you appear to have expensive plans." "You cannot." "I can," said the Duke of Ingram, "and you had far better spend the remainder of this evening being charming to your intended, since I understand she has an uncle in the funds and a low opinion of scenes." He walked away before Gryce found anything to say. Miss Marbury left within the half-hour in a hired chaise with her aunt. Ambrose stood at a window on the first landing and watched the lamps go down the drive, and found that he minded it, which was inconvenient, since he had a drainage scheme to finish and no intention whatever of marrying. He wrote to her on Wednesday. It was, he told himself, a matter of ordinary civility. He was answered on Friday, in a firm small hand. "Your Grace, I thank you, but I must decline. I understand what you intended in your ballroom, and I shall be grateful for it as long as I live. But if I come to Ingram now, every soul in the county will say I was passed from one man to another in a single evening like a hat, and that the second man took me out of pity because the first would not have me. I would rather sew shirts. I am tolerably good at it." It was signed, D. Marbury. Ambrose read it twice and then laughed, alone in the room with the map, and thought, "Ah, so it will be work then." He did not write again. He went instead, on the following Tuesday, to the house in Cheap Row where Miss Marbury lived with her aunt on £90 a year, and he did not go in a crested carriage. He rode, and tied his own horse, and knocked, and asked to see Mrs. Marbury. The aunt was small, sharp, and unimpressed by dukes. "You will forgive me if I speak plainly, Your Grace. She cried for 2 days after your ball, and not one tear of it was for Mr. Gryce." "Then what was it for?" "For being seen," said Mrs. Marbury. "There is nothing so hard to be forgiven as being pitied in public. If you have come to be kind to her, go away." "I have come," said Ambrose, "to ask your permission to be seen with her, repeatedly, in daylight, in the market, at the assembly, in church, and anywhere else where the county keeps its accounts, for as long as it takes, until the notion that I chose her out of pity is too stupid to be repeated aloud." He turned his hat over. "And I should like your permission to be refused by her a great many times without giving it up, which I understand is generally thought to be bad manners." Mrs. Marbury looked at him for a long moment. "You had better sit down," she said. "She is at the linen draper's until 4, and I have some questions." So it went from March to September. He escorted her to the Michaelmas market, and carried her aunt's basket the length of the High Street with his own hands, and let every farmer in the district see him do it. He sat in the Marbury pew at the parish church, which measured 7 feet by 4 and smelled of hymn books, when he owned a gallery at Ingram with a stove in it. He asked her to dance at the public assembly at the Swan, twice, in front of the same people who had laughed, and when a certain lady declined to be introduced to Miss Marbury, he replied that he entirely understood, and that Ingram's invitations for the winter were a very difficult business, and moved on. He learned that she read Herodotus for pleasure. He learned that she had done her father's accounts from the age of 15, and had known about the £11,000 2 years before anyone else did, and had said nothing because it would have killed him faster. He learned that she could not be flattered, could be made to laugh with almost no effort at all, and had a temper that arrived like weather and left the same way. She refused him in June. "Because you have not thought about it properly, Your Grace, and I will not be a gesture." She refused him in July. "Because your aunt is being kind to me, and I cannot tell yet whether you are following her lead." In August she did not refuse him, she said. "Ask me in the autumn," and went pink to the ears and walked off through the stubble field so fast that her aunt's dog could not keep up, and Ambrose stood among the sheaves and felt something come loose in his chest that had been screwed down since he was 20. The county, being the county, turned. By August the story in the market was no longer that the Duke of Ingram had pitied a jilted girl. It was that Ingram, who had refused every eligible woman in 4 counties for 15 years, had spent 7 months carrying a basket down the high street and being refused by a seamstress, which was a far better story, and had the advantage of being true. Mr. Fenton Gryce's engagement to the Primrose heiress came to nothing in July, the uncle in the funds having formed an opinion. In September, Gryce waited 2 hours in the Ingram steward's office to ask for a remission of the ordinary rent, and was heard courteously, and told that the term stood. On his way out, he passed Miss Marbury in the passage, where she had come with a parcel of mended linen, and he took off his hat and said, "Delphine." "Miss Marbury," she said. "Miss Marbury, I hope you will believe that I never—" "Mr. Gryce," she said, "I hope you will be very happy, and I hope you will not say the rest of it because I have forgiven you, and if you go on I shall have to do it again." Ambrose, in the doorway behind her, said nothing at all, and afterwards told her that it had been the single most difficult silence of his life. He asked her the last time on the 29th of September, in the kitchen at Cheap Row, with his coat off because the range was going, and her aunt's dog asleep on his boot. "Miss Marbury, I have been coming to this house for 7 months. Your aunt has begun to give me the smaller cup, which I take to mean I am now family or now furniture. I have no speech prepared, because I have made 3 and you have laughed at all of them." He turned his hat over once, the old habit. "I did not choose you in my ballroom. I want that understood before you answer. In my ballroom I only recognized you. The choosing has taken me all summer, and it has been the only thing I have ever done slowly and well." He put the hat down. "Will you marry me?" Delphine Marbury set down the shirt she was hemming. She never stopped working while she thought. He had come to love that about her, and looked at him a long moment with the firelight on one side of her face. "You sat in our pew," she said. "For 29 Sundays it has a draft. It has a shocking draft. You carried Aunt's basket past the Corbetts' window on purpose." "On purpose," said Ambrose, "and I made 2 turns of the street to be sure they were at home." Ambrose? It was the first time she had used it, and he felt it go through him like a struck bell. "Yes, of course, yes. I have wanted to say it since the stubble field, and I have been so frightened of being a gesture, and you have spent 7 months making it impossible for anyone to call me one." Her voice caught. "Nobody has ever taken that much trouble over me. Not once. Not ever." He took her hands, ink on one, a needle callus on the other, and the thumb of her glove still darned, because she had never had it mended, and he had never once suggested she should. "Then it is settled," he said, "and I shall spend the rest of my life taking trouble over you, and being insufferable about how long I had to wait." They were married in the parish church in November, not at Ingram, her choice, with the 7x4 pew crowded out, and the doors open onto a wet churchyard and half the high street standing in it. Mrs. Marbury gave her away, and cried into a black-edged handkerchief she had kept since her husband's funeral, and declared afterwards that she had liked the man from the moment he tied up his own horse. The Duchess of Ingram made her first appearance at the Ingram Winter Ball a month later, at the head of the room, under the largest chandelier, in white silk with her hair up, and received 300 people who had once laughed at her on that exact square of parquet. She was gracious to every one of them. She was particularly gracious to the cousin who had put out a foot, who was seen afterwards weeping quietly behind a pillar, and was brought a glass of wine by the Duchess herself. Ambrose watched from the steps where he had set down his glass a year before. His aunt came to stand beside him. "You are looking at her as though you had invented her." "I am looking at her," said the Duke of Ingram, "because she walked the whole length of that floor when it would have been easier to run, and I have been unable to look at anything else since." Later, when the room had thinned, he danced the waltz with his wife under the chandelier badly, as promised, and she corrected him, as promised, and did not stop correcting him for 41 years.